So your Tottenham boys win?
I honestly have no clue. I haven't looked yet. Been running around this morning. Let me
They got
check
the dub.
actually now that I'm curious.
They got the dub.
There we go.
4-1.
There we go.
All right. Here
That's
we
what
go.
I like to hear. Who scored? Harry Kane? Oh no.
Different dudes.
Kulishevsky.
Kulishevsky. All right, everybody. Welcome to The Charge. This is, of course, your boy Bernie along with Pete.
What's up, people?
And today, guys, we're going to quickly talk, or maybe not quickly, we are going to talk about some NBA Price is Right edition of the NBA. This is, of course, an idea spawned by Pete. And so I thought, you know what? Let's do it. And so we're just going to be doing a couple players here and there. We're obviously, the headline of today's video is LeBron James worth $97.1 million? We're going to do an NBA Price is Right, see if that's kind of where we value them, and kind of go back and forth in that sense. We're going to talk a little bit about the Mitchell trade rumors and just kind of what has been going on there, and asking, Pete and myself and anybody else in the chat, is Donovan Mitchell worth trading for if you're the New York Knicks or a team looking to contend in the playoff? But before we do that, guys, like I said, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, all that stuff leads to great algorithm from YouTube, and YouTube says, hey, you guys should check out The Charge more. And so we're looking forward to doing that. And again, this is more behind the scenes stuff. We're going to try to see what we can do to also kind of boost the algorithm as well. So, again, continue to subscribe, continue to like the videos that you watch. And let's just get started, Pete. We're going to start off with the Podal NBA player guessing game. I'm gonna be in control of it and have Pete kind of guess some stuff. So we're gonna go to the live scene really quick. And we're going to go with kind of the first guess. Give me any NBA player currently in the NBA, Pete.
Any NBA player. Kristaps Porzingis.
Ugh, okay. Hang on, let me see it.
Why did he come to my head first? I don't know. Maybe it's trauma. We're coming from a place of trauma this morning.
Okay. I'm going to type that into Podal. Okay, there we go. Okay, so he does play in the Eastern Conference.
Okay.
Wrong, not the right division, but is a forward and a center. So
A forward and a center.
And he's shorter than 7'3" and older than 27, and has played more years in the league.
Oh goodness. Okay, that's not easy. He plays in the East. Does he play in the South?
He does not. It does not look like he plays in the Southeast Division.
Okay.
Shorter than 7'3".
I more mean like the southeast part of the United States.
Oh.
Okay. I should have probably asked by division. That makes more sense. Oh boy. All right. Is he in the? Oh my goodness, man. This is really tough. Does he play for the Celtics?
I'm not sure. It doesn't tell me anything other than that stuff, so we have to keep guessing. So give me a player in the East from not in the Southeast.
Okay, player in the East. So I just have to basically go from
yeah,
just any player, just a mini player in the East.
Yeah, but this player is shorter.
Only people that keep coming to my head.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, shorter than 7, and he plays 7.
Shorter than 7'3", older than 27. Plays the forward or center position, it looks like. Who are we going with?
Brook Lopez.
Brook
Lopez.
All right, let's see if that's the guess. Oh, you got it.
He's 7'1".
You got it. You got on the second try.
Are you kidding me? That was really... Oh, dude.
No, check the stream, bro. Check the stream. You got it. You officially got it. Brook Lopez.
I just had to think of my favorite caveman in the league, and we got there.
Solved it in 2.
There we go.
Of course, that's the next time we'll do it. So again, we're gonna kind of start with that, and as soon as we get a lot more people in the stream, we're gonna obviously maybe have you guys chime in on this because I would love to get, like I said, I'd love to get the community involved, and this is just a fun game to play as we kind of wait for more people to kind of tune into the stream. But nevertheless, Pete, should we get right into our topic of the day?
Let's do it, brother. I'm ready.
All right, and before we get started on our Price is Right NBA edition, like I talked about it way before, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Again, like I said, we are trying to grow this channel into being something special, something that we want you guys to be this is a community, I feel like, in my opinion. And so the more that you guys can contribute, the more that you guys can kind of be in here and talk on the live chat or, afterwards, post video, is a great way for us to get better algorithms and better communication with you guys. So nevertheless, please, like I said, please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe. So enough of me shilling. Let's get right into it. Pete, this is your topic or kind of your segment that you suggested. So how do you want to start this, or what would you like to do for it?
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Price is Right. You just basically go like, you see the item back on the old show with Bob Barker, see the item, and you try and guess what the price is, right? And then, assume, and let's use the NBA as the context, obviously. That's what we're here to do. We'll take a player, let's say, for example, let's just pick an easy one I think a lot of people might agree on, right? Bradley Beal, right?
Okay.
You would look at that contract. He's making close to $50 million a year now with his new Supermax extension. And it's just up to us to decide, whether or not, and this is a little bit more subjective, obviously, than the original prices, right? There's actually a dollar value associated to those items. But we just have to compare and test and, come to the best conclusion we can, whether or not he's worth that price, like it's a fair price, it's too much, or it's not enough, and then we'll go player to player. Some potential ones we'll talk about later, upcoming extensions, but let's start with players who just got their extensions because we've already talked a lot about those guys, and I think we and a lot of the people already have some pretty formed opinions on a lot of those extensions, so we can move through those and then get into some potential long-term ones afterwards.
I feel it. All right, so let's start with Bradley Beal. Let's look at him. Obviously making. Let's see here. Really quick before we start that, Tarky Unleashed said Pete came through with a prime Bill Simmons segment for the people today.
I mean, I guess so. Me and Billy, we got the same ideas. You gotta work around it,
All right, so let's look at Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal, let's just kind of a little bit of context here. 29 years old, about to be 30, 10-year vet in this league. Played for the Washington Wizards his whole career so far. So I guess the question is he worth the $251 million that he got? Do you think that that's the fair price? Or do you think that that's overvalued, undervalued? How are you feeling about this one?
Well, the reason I bring him up is because, like I said, I think he's probably the easiest one to determine, in my opinion. I know there's going to be people who disagree and would say he's worth, if not more than that price. I would argue, based on career success, and nowadays that's kind of an if discussion of whether or not that actually matters in terms of getting these contract extensions. Obviously, it doesn't. He got the extension with not very much success in his career in terms of playoffs, in terms of actually accomplishing like winning records throughout the season. I would argue certainly not that price, right? Because the first question you have to ask yourself, is he a one, right? He's getting paid like a one, like your number one guy, somebody who's going to lead you to a playoff series win, at least one or two series wins. And I would argue, if you've watched any of the Wizards play over the last few seasons where Bradley Beal is their main guy, I think you should probably agree he's not worth that much money. I don't think he's a one on a winning team.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. I mean, if we look at the contract that he got, making 43 this year, then by the time he is a player option, he is going to be making 57. So, obviously the contract as a whole is what we should look at. And yeah, I don't think he's worth the max extension. Because like you said, played 10 years in the league already. Not saying that he doesn't deserve his money, but you think about, the Wizards and where they're at currently, right? He doesn't fit, to quote you and my friend Josh, our friend Josh, he doesn't fit the timeline. There's
Yeah.
no timeline there for Bradley Beal to be there by the time, these kids that are playing for the Wizards right now, your Ruiz, your Kisperts, your Johnny Davis, and many of these other guys. This to me is definitely an overvalued, and where would I probably value him at is probably at that. I would probably say like at that 120 that John Collins got is probably a more fair value. I mean, again, he's a great player, all star. Not going to knock him for any of that stuff. But when you think of signing a max player, you think that this player is going to be your future for the many years to come. He's 29 right now, 30 years old. Probably got like another 5, maybe 6 years left in the league. I just don't think at this point you could say that the value that you're getting for Bradley Beal is saying, hey, we are this close to winning a championship, or hey, this is the cornerstone piece franchise player that we are missing for the Wizards. And I just don't think that that's the right value for him.
I mean, not at all. And going with the timeline, we always talk about what is the plan? What's the next guy? Who can you even afford with the contracts you have on the team? Like this is why I argue they're in one of the worst situations in the league, right? They have not a lot in terms of high ceiling assets on their team. Like Johnny Davis, for whatever you think of Johnny Davis is not going to be a superstar. I could be wrong. I just don't see it from him. I see it at best like a really solid role player, maybe even a really good six man. But I don't see a superstar from Johnny Davis. And then you look at their picks from last year and Corey Kispert, another guy that's like a high-end value role player at best, probably. And then from a few years ago, it's Rui Hachimura, who can't really stay on the court. Like we need to see a lot more from him. So this is one of the weirdest contracts in the league because on one hand, they have to give him this contract because you can't just let him walk for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go back to zero. But they put themselves in that situation in the first place. They've had literal years of contract or trade discussions to move this guy off this underperforming team, and they've chosen not to do it time and time again when they could have gotten real assets. Like there is a chance. I mean, they probably could have made a deal 2 seasons ago to get Jaylen Brown and some picks and whatever it was. Maybe even Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown and some picks a couple seasons ago. Yeah. And they chose not to do it. Whether or not that trade was actually sent, I mean, that has been rumored for years now. So I think they put themselves in. It's kind of the inverse of the Brunson situation, right? Where, mind you, Bradley Beal is a much better player than Jalen Brunson. I'm not really comparing them 1-to-1 in terms of quality. Yeah. But they waited so long that they had to give as much as he wanted to get the contract done. So I will still say that this is a guy that will not be on this team a year from now. I really highly doubt it. I think he was getting his extension and he's going to get moved. And realistically, that benefits the Wizards too. They should have just done it earlier without having to pay him as much as they did. So this, I think, is a good one to start with because I think we're pretty much unanimously in agreement that this is the price. The price is not right on this one. This was way, way, way too much for what Beal gives you. Because even his best season, which was not last season, but the season before, he was the NBA's point per game leader, I believe, 30.7 points per game. That just didn't amount to much. It took a miraculous second half of Russell Westbrook's season that year to get them into the play-in game. So I think that tells you all you need to know about what Beal does for you as a team. If Russell Westbrook was needed to get you to the playoffs with Beal, I think you need to, be a little nervous about that contract.
Yeah, and let us know in the comment section down below, people, or if you're in the live chat with us, let us know, is Bradley Beal worth the value that he got with this contract, or do you think that the Wizards overpaid? Let us know in the comment section down below. All right, I'm going to move on to another easy one. Let's go with Zach LaVine, I think, or maybe might not be an easy one. I'm curious to see what you think about it.
That might not be an easy one, but I'll let you start on this one.
Okay, so really quick for reference, Zach LaVine, obviously shooting guard, 27 years old, 8 years in the league, kind of bounced around from a couple teams, but is still a tremendous talent. Played at UCLA, was a 13th overall pick, and he recently just signed a 5-year, 215, obviously extra money as well, $1 million contract. For the most part, it goes up to $40 basically $49 million by the time he's 31 years old, as that is a player option deal. And so for the next couple of years, especially the next four, he'll get paid around roughly, the 40 something mark. Base salary of 37. Anyway, an average salary of 43 is what I should say. So looking at kind of Zach LaVine, the over under, Pete. What do you feel like do you feel like it's overvalued, undervalued, or do you feel like it's just right?
I would say at this point in time, this is closer to just right, in my opinion.
Oh wow.
I would rather pay Zach LaVine this much money than Bradley Beal, especially because of Zach LaVine's defense in the last season and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Starting in the Olympics last summer, he to elevate his defensive game and kind of use that athleticism and his length more, like the way we were kind of hoping he would his whole early part of his career. It just took a while for him to get that facet of his game under control. And legit defender at this point in his career. He's not like going to lock a lot of people down, but he's definitely not, a traffic cone like Tar Heel Nation said about Bradley Beal. Like, he's not a traffic cone. He's going to play good defense. This is kind of a similar situation to Bradley Beal in the sense that LaVine was definitely rumored not to be coming back to this team on this extension for a while. Yeah. And, he's in trade discussions every other weekend for a little bit. I just feel like they could have gotten him a little cheaper if they had done this extension last season, when he wanted it in the first place.
Yeah.
But they basically just bet on, let's see what you can do this season with a new team around you, with Mar DeRozan, with Lonzo, with Caruso.
Yeah.
And he showed that he can elevate his game. So in my opinion, I think it's worth it. Like, another situation where they couldn't just let this guy walk. He's too good to walk, and you've already invested this much time into him.
Mm-hmm.
I like this one more. I really do, and he's a little bit younger than Beal too, isn't he? He's 27.
27. Probably gonna turn 28 a little bit later down the line.
I would pay this contract personally. Like if I was in the same place, and I wouldn't be too upset about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that this is probably the fair price. I think that with inflation, it's probably fair. Maybe with inflation, it's a little different. But I just think, like, jokes aside, I do think that this was a fair price for Zach LaVine. I mean, if we think about him as a basketball player and what he can do, I felt like their season really got shafted by the fact that they had a lot of injuries at the most inopportune times. Caruso got hurt, Lonzo Ball got hurt, and that is all season. So it's a pretty frustrating thing for, I would say, the Chicago Bulls, who, again, traded away their future and most of their assets to get themselves in this position of, okay, we got Lonzo, we got LaVine, we got Vucevic, we're now trying to contend for the title. And so
true,
I do think that they are ready to contend. I guess the question for me is, can the health of these guys, can they stay healthy? Because that, again, it all determines whether or not this contract is worth it, because again, Zach LaVine could have just left. He could have just said, I'm not really interested in re-signing with you. I'm going to go sign somewhere else. And so I think this was a good deal to sign by the Chicago Bulls, because it kind of assures them that whether Lonzo gets hurt and other things like that, it just means they're not stuck with the team without Zach LaVine now. And so I think that you had to pay this price. This was something that was forced to be paid, in my opinion.
Then with his age, I would argue you're even less stuck than the Wizards are in general. Like, it's much easier to move with, a few years younger. He's making a little bit less. I also think he's accustomed to not necessarily just being the guy. He kind of is, but he's in that weird, like, kind of tweener between, he is the guy on a lot of the bad teams he's played on, but he doesn't seem necessarily too in his own head to take a step back. Like, he definitely seemed like when Mar DeRozan had that, stretch of time in the early middle of last season where he was taking game winner after game winner. He was, in MVP discussions. Zach LaVine seemed to be pretty down to be his wingman, which, not that Bradley Beal isn't. That's not really what I'm saying. I just do think that there's something to be said about getting paid a little closer to being a number two guy. It's a little bit less than Beal's, and I think he's kind of more he's a more suiting fit in that kind of role than Bradley Beal is. Like to be totally honest with you, I would prefer, let's say they're on the same exact contract, exactly the same, and let's say it's
The
down to Zach
251?
LaVine's contract. Let's put it down to, is that LaVine's contract 251 or is that
No,
Beal's contract?
that's Beal's contract.
Let's
215
put
is
it down
Zach.
to LaVine. Let's
215.
put LaVine and
Okay.
Beal at the 215. I would probably still pick LaVine personally. I'm really not super high on Bradley Beal. I haven't been for years now. I just don't see anywhere to go up with him, like in
Yeah.
terms of that contract and just in general. I just
Mhm.
don't see it. So Levine only keeps getting better. I feel like he adds a lot to his game every time I see him like take that step forward too, which seems like it's been every season for the last few years. So
Yeah.
I'd take Levine even at the same contract as Beal personally.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I mean, if we look at it, I think Levine is a taller, longer defender. Kind of takes a little more pride in his defense. So I would probably go Zach LaVine too, and that just might be a Seattle bias just because he played in this area. And so that also might.
I mean,
be
I
it
was
too.
just about to say, if you're a longtime viewer or listener of this channel, Bernie, you know this as well as I do. I've long time been a huge critic of Zach LaVine. I really
Mhm.
was not a big fan of his for years and years. Like even into 2 seasons ago, when people were really starting to get high on Zach LaVine, I just
Mhm.
didn't see it. It really took until those Olympics to see his commitment to defense, and just
Yeah.
like it seemed like his mindset changed it.
Yeah.
It's flipped for me. I can't really actually believe how high I am on Zach where
Yeah.
I was a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. But really quick, Cluck, you said I'd pay Bernie that much. You're damn right you would. Anybody
I
would pay me
would. I would
215,
be
man.
an
I need it.
underpay.
It'd be an underpay. Nah. But
Underpay.
yeah, I mean this is like I said, this is gonna be a fun game. And Russ, you were talking about Chelsea up 1-0. Yeah, we don't really care about Chelsea, to be honest with you. Uh
I like old Chelsea. I like early
you like the Mourinho Chelsea?
2000 Chelsea. I care about.
The Jose
Yeah, I love like Drogba. That's my guy. Drogba and Frank Lampard. Come on, those are the guys.
uh
FIFA, dude. Oof.
FIFA the FIFA days. And then Sean said the king is worth every cent. We'll get to him a little bit later, Sean.
Oh, we're gonna talk about him. We're gonna talk about him. I have thoughts.
Ooh, okay. I'm excited about that. But again, let us know in the comment section down below. Is Zach LaVine worth that? Is the price right for Zach LaVine, or do we think that he's overvalued or undervalued? I want you guys to leave your comments and opinions in the comment section down below. And if you're live with us, put it in the chat. I want to see what you guys think about Mr. Zach LaVine. All right, should we? You want me to pick? Or
I got the next.
All right.
I got the next one because I think we're going to disagree about this one.
Right.
Karl Anthony Towns.
Carl
Veteran player extension. He got the Supermax, 4-year Supermax extension. He's not going to be available until 2028 in free agency, and the extension is $224 million for Karl Anthony Towns. I will start. I do not think he's worth this. I would not pay Karl Anthony Towns this. I know this is probably controversial. A lot of people would disagree.
Mm-hmm.
I have the same reasons I've always had with Karl Anthony Towns. The same reasons I've always had in terms of his commitment to defense. And this is crazy coming from me. I feel like I'm becoming the Timberwolves guy. I love the Timberwolves. Love Anthony Edwards. I said that the Rudy Gobert trade put them in contendership status. Right? I really do think this team's going to be like a sneaky. They're going to have one of the better regular season records in a pretty high seed in the West relative to what people think they're going to have, just because the defense is going to be nasty with Gobert. I mean, whatever you think about Gobert, regular season Gobert's defense is it. People just don't like to play that guy in the regular season. Once it's the postseason, things change for him. But that's not what we're talking about at this exact second. Karl Anthony Towns, however, I just feel like he's too inconsistent, man. Even the things he's really good at. There's times like, let's go to the playoffs against the Grizzlies. That series, right? The last time we saw him play.
Mm-hmm.
He was definitely not the best player on his own team, right? He is getting paid like the best player on his team, but Anthony Edwards was the best player on that team. I refuse to think otherwise. I watched every second of that series. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But the games where Minnesota was losing and lost by a lot of points, down to a lot of bad decision making by Karl Anthony Towns. And it's not like it was only on him. D'Angelo Russell was taking some really ugly shots down the stretch in certain games. And, it's not like they had a lot of help either necessarily on the offensive side. But Karl Anthony Towns, I just never see enough progress to fulfill this image of what people have of Karl Anthony Towns in their head. He's so skilled offensively, but his decision making sometimes is just so suspect. Like, it's so suspect sometimes what I see him do. And defensively, he's just never been a guy he should be. With the length he has, the size, and just like how athletic he is, he does not defend the way you should. And that's why Minnesota finds themselves in the situation they are. They overpaid for a defender who can cover Karl Anthony Towns' roles as a player, right? And they overpaid crazy to get this guy. Same time, you give a supermax extension, the most money possible, to a guy that now you're covering up holes for. And that's where I start to get to the point of like what are we doing? Is that really, are we going to give all our assets to cover our highest paid players' his game? I think that is like a kind of a weird conundrum to be in. And I've long thought, like, just move off of Karl Anthony Towns. People think he's worth so much, and now you're truly locked in. And I do think it's going to benefit, the Rudy Gobert trade is going to benefit Karl Anthony Towns, and I probably will feel different seeing him in these like better situations. But at the end of the day, you're still in better situations because you had to give up all that stuff to solve this issue that he presents you as a team. So I'd like to hear how you feel. I'm sure you feel differently than me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit different than you. I think that, when I look at Karl Anthony Towns again, I think the thing that you can say about him throughout his career, I would say from his rookie year to where he's at right now, he has progressed as a player. Not saying that it's been by much, but you can see that there has been some progression in his offense, his shooting percentages, 3-point percentages, free throws, rebounding, assist. I mean, these numbers are consistent throughout his whole career. And so I think it's not a bad contract, especially when you realize that he's only going to be 27 years old by the time the price is right, Russ. I do agree with you there. I just feel like it's kind of the same thing with like the Zach LaVine. I know Zach LaVine's not getting as much because that's not his original team. But I think that this is the right contract. I think that when you look at it, $50 million for a really good player, and I think I think his offense and his ability to be the number 2 guy, because like you said, I have a good hunch that Anthony Edwards is going to be the number 1 guy. And again, it comes back to that timeline situation. So that's the reason why Anthony Edwards is not going to get paid like a number 1 at all. It's all because of all that stuff.
Sure.
But
yeah,
obviously where he was drafted and still on his rookie deal is probably the reason why the Timberwolves felt like they can pay them. But I do think that he and Rudy Gobert can work well together. Like I said, I'm curious to see how it does mesh together for the playoffs more so than really the regular season, because I think regular season you play against the Magic, you play against these or maybe not the Magic anymore, but trying to think of really crappy teams right now. You play the trying to think of just the Pacers, for example, or like these teams are
Portland.
not very.
Yeah, I think they destroy Portland.
Like you're not playing those teams. You're going to be playing the good
just
teams.
The size, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to see how that works out. And if Karl Anthony Towns even just remotely stays the same, or even just a little bit better with the addition of Gobert, my only caveat for that is D'Angelo Russell. Because I feel like there's some times when I look at D'Angelo Russell and I just get confused as to, or maybe not confused. I understand why he continues to be a guy that is so inconsistent in the league, right? He keeps bouncing from team to team. And there has to be a reason for that. And I just think he's just so inconsistent and a player that not a lot of teams are high on, right? He's kind of like a value guy. Like that, the value is the fact that he is a trade asset. And that's what I feel like he is I can't remember who the last guy was that felt that way, but he just feels like just a trade value asset guy now. And I just think that for the Timberwolves to really take off, and I know that this is totally different from the Price is Right, I think they're going to have to do something with him and try to get rid of him and try to bring in somebody else. But I know that D'Lo is a friend of Karl Anthony Towns, so I don't think that that's necessarily going to happen. But to kind of cut a long story short, I do think that Karl Anthony Towns is worth the contract. I think that when you look at the numbers and the way that it crunches, I think that you could definitely say that he is the right price for what the Timberwolves need for him in the future. But again, that is just me, and we'll wait for P. I'm not sure if P is having some internet problems, so we'll continue to talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. I was just going to say, my only Karl Anthony Towns, I guess I should throw in, I think in terms of where he's at in his career, how they've built this team, they clearly want to compete right now, so they had to give him this contract.
Yeah.
It is reasonable, I guess. Like in terms of he's a borderline All NBA player every season. Was he third team last season, or did he not make it?
Let me look at the NBA all teams really quick.
I don't remember. Regardless, I do think he's probably, like, it's my own bias. I'm just not a Karl Anthony Towns guy. I just wouldn't have even kept him long enough to give him this extension personally. But in terms of keeping this team around, you make this trade for Gobert, they had to give him this contract. So I guess I'll kind of retroactively change my answer just a little bit and say the price is right, but I just wouldn't have paid it personally.
Made the third team.
I mean, this is the price you pay for any All NBA guy. At the least, this is what it is. So sure, the price is right. I just wouldn't have paid it.
Yeah,
from Karl Anthony Towns. So I'm sure I'm going to be on the outside looking in on that.
Let's see here. So Cluck, you said I don't see how Timberwolves are going to guard teams with Cat and Rudy. Tar Heel Nation, you said after Cat crapped his pants against Memphis, I can't look at him the same. Karl don't got that dog in him. I got the dog.
See, to me, that's the question of, like, I saw Anthony Towns for years before that series. That didn't really change my opinion. If anything, it was just evidence to my feelings I already had with him. So I don't know. That is kind of the trade-off you get with a guy like him. Yeah. It's kind of funny that him and D'Lo are such spiritual best friends. Like, they're kind of spiritually intertwined in terms of their consistency issues. Yeah. Like, that's both of their big issues: decision making and consistency for both of them.
Yeah, let's see here. Let's go with Jalen Brunson next. I kind of want to talk about this contract.
Yeah.
You know how we've talked about this contract ad nauseum before, but for the price is right, let's continue to talk about this again. Jalen Brunson played for the Mavericks, was really good. Kind of an older point guard, obviously kind of stayed a little bit longer at Villanova, champion as well. He's going to be making a 4-year, $104 million contract with the Knicks, with all that being guaranteed, with an average salary of $26 million. Pete, I'll let you go first. Is this a good or a bad contract for the New York Knickerbockers? And is this the price is right for Jalen Brunson?
I think the price is right in this situation. I do. I think he's the 16th or 17th highest paid point guard in the league. It's really not a bad deal. It's just not, it's just not. Whether or not it pans out this season or not is not really the point. In 2 seasons, 3 seasons from now, when they do the collective bargaining agreement again, and the TV right deals go through, the cap space is going to shoot up again. It's just going to shoot up again, and people are going to look back at this contract and they're going to say, "Wow, that's pretty reasonable." It really is reasonable now, but by the standards of 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it's way more than reasonable. And this is just what you pay to get a guard right now, like a high quality, do it all kind of court general type of point guard. This is what these guys are worth. It just is historically true, even especially right now. The question I have is this, right? And this is how I painted the picture in my head. At first, I was very anti this deal. And people are going to instantly eye roll me in just a second, but hear me out, okay? Look at what the Phoenix Suns are paying Chris Paul, okay? Chris Paul is about 38. He's about to be 39, I believe. And by all standards, a guy that throughout his whole career, but especially the last few years, cannot stay healthy when it comes time for the playoffs, right? Chris Paul is premier version of Jalen Brunson. He's premier version. He does a lot of the same things. He's a smaller guard. He controls the pace of the game, kind of puts his guys in the right spots. but he can get his own shot and he's efficient with his shot. Just look at it like this. You're basically paying in the realm of 55 to 65% of Chris Paul's contract, but for a guy who's 15 years younger than him. A guy who wanted to be in New York City, a guy that wants to be part of the culture in New York, and he's going to buy in instantly to a team that really last season, that was their biggest problem, was their best player on paper was Randall, and he didn't buy in. So getting a guy like this who culturally is going to impact the game, he's exactly the guy the Knicks have been looking for 20 years. I just think you have to put him in comparison, not by contract to just every player, but to his contemporaries at his position. It's a good contract. I would rather pay him the price he's at right now than 3 years of Chris Paul at $40 million plus. Gotta do that. I mean, I don't even know what Chris Paul's contract is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's like 39 or 40 mil a season right now, isn't it?
It's about the same as what LeBron might get in for Lakers, or similar, if I'm not mistaken. I think we might have lost him here.
My goodness, man.
Oh no, there you are.
We're back. It's just the difference is it's age, it's health, it's you are betting a little bit on Brunson that the last season was not just a fluke. You're betting a little bit, but he doesn't play he's so skill based. Like his game is so built around his skill set that it's gonna translate, in my opinion. You're not necessarily, it's not as big of a gamble as people think it is.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I mean, we look at a guy like Jalen Brunson. Again, I loved his play set. I think when he played for the Dallas Mavericks, you clearly see that there is a special player in there. There's not someone that's a one-hit wonder or only going to last a couple years. I think that Jalen Brunson will play the way that he did it in Dallas. The only concern I have for the Knicks is that I don't think that they have another guy unless you think RJ Barrett is that guy.
To me, he's the guy. Me.
And I just feel like this year is a prove-it year for a lot of those guys in that draft class. And, obviously I think Rui Hachimura is involved in, or I should say not involved, but he's also part of that group where it's like, okay, now we need to see what you're really about as a player kind of going into contract extensions and other things like that. But going back to the Jalen Brunson contract, like you said, this is a perfect price to pay for a point guard that's going to be a solid pace-setting guard. This is not going to be a guy who is a shot taker, a shot maker. He's gonna get everybody involved. Not necessarily a Chris Paul style, but he's so patient on offense and he gets so many paint touches inside the paint with his pace and his change of speed and change of direction. That just makes it so much easier for other guys to get open, to get them open shots. And you can clearly see that with him and Luka were playing together. And it just made it so much easier for Luka to get more offensive output from him. And the reason, honestly, why they won or got to the Western Conference Finals and beat the Phoenix Suns in that I can't remember how many games they won in, like 4 or 5 games. And so I think that when we look at a Jalen Brunson contract, we look at what he's able to do stat-wise for the Dallas Mavericks. So they'll open up right here. Perfect. He got his point total up. He went from, a guy that was averaging like 9 points in his first year to now averaging 16 because they trust him now. More assists than ever. Free throw percentage at 84%. What you want from a guard. Field goal percentage, 50%. Right around where you want your point guards to be. Obviously, he didn't shoot the three as well as he did the year prior, but still 37% is above average. You want the average to me is probably like 34% for the league. And so you can clearly see that there has been improvements with Jalen Brunson's game. And I think he's worth every penny. I think the Knicks got a great point guard. I guess the question about Jalen Brunson going forward is, can he be, or I guess like I said earlier, like who is going to be the guy that you pair with most of these guys? And really quick, Cluck, you said, I think y'all are underestimating his scoring ability a bit. I'm interested to see how he does without a Luka level star for an entire season. And I don't think we're necessarily underestimating his scoring ability, Cluck. I think it's more so the fact that his paint touch and the ability for him to drive and get guys their shots and opportunities is a perfect thing. And if we kind of go to go to Basketball Reference, and I apologize about my seat. I need to get a new chair. It looks like. Let's see here. I want Basketball Reference. Oops. And we can really kind of
When
check.
like while you look that up, can you hear me? You can hear
Yeah,
me,
I
right?
can hear you now.
Okay. Well, the one thing while you find that, like I don't think I'm underestimating a square. I don't think you are either. I mean, the difference, and one thing that I don't think people give him enough credit for, he was doing a lot of his scoring without Luka. You know, he was kind of thrust into that second guy on the team. This is the next guy up in terms of we need you to score if Luka's out, and he did that. I mean, there was the stretch where Luka hurt his leg, kind of late middle of the season, I believe, and he was the in playoff contention. And then you get to the Utah series, and he was cooking Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the questions, one of the caveats for him is, you know, is this contract worth it if they add Mitchell to this team? Is the pairing good enough? Should we have sent Jalen Brunson to the contract if we go out and make Donovan Mitchell our star? I would argue that would kind of raise some questions of why did you pay this guy this much if you're going to bring in another small, defensively questionable guard, right? The difference is Brunson is just so much more of he adds a little bit for everybody around him than I think everybody gives him credit for. He really is, and it's the only reason I compare him to Chris Paul. Like Chris Paul's skill set to skill set is a much better player. I'm not pretending anything else. I'm not living in crazy land thinking we got a better Chris Paul for the Knicks. The difference is the consistency, one, and two, the additional stuff he gives all the guys on the team on the floor with him. I mean, that is a huge benefit to a player like Jalen Brunson.
Yeah. And really quick, you know, we look at the stats here. I mean, you can clearly see that the numbers have gone up each and every year. And again, I think his offensive production has gone up because of how much he can attack the paint, how much he can drive inside. And again, you know, we look at the turnover ratio. It's not necessarily the best. I mean, he obviously had better years. But you can clearly see that, you know, this was a good year. You know, it was a 3-to-1 ratio. I know how you feel about Jay Wright, Cluck. I know how you feel about him. But you can clearly see that, like, when you look at the stats from Jalen Brunson and the way that he is playing, you know, after 252 attempts, he made 94 threes. And again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be looking for his shot, right? He's going to be a guy that is going to necessarily go attack the paint, see if there's something inside first, and then afterwards he can decide, okay, I'm going to take the shot, or he's going to be like, you know what, I'm just going to pass it off and pass to my teammate. And that's something that you want in a point guard. I just think for the Knicks perspective, they need to find their guy, and if RJ Barrett is that guy, like, and you know, me and Pete probably disagree on RJ Barrett just a little bit in terms of, you know, is he the number one on your team? Because we saw Julius Randle, he's a great number 3, maybe even number 4, but he's not your number 2 or your number 1. He has to kind of be kind of a role, maybe not a role player is the right word, but he just can't be the dominant player on your team, for me personally. And so as we kind of continue to look at what's going on for the NBA, that's kind of where I'm at with this team. And give me one sec, Pete. Why don't you go ahead and talk?
Interesting.
Why don't you continue to talk? I'll be right back.
Okay. I was just going to say this season will be interesting. That's kind of why I'm anti-trading Randall for nothing. You know, Jalen Brunson, you're unmuted. You're still talking. Regardless, back to what I was saying. Listen, he's going to add value to a guy like Julius Randle. If you watched any of the Knicks last season, which I'm sure a lot of you didn't, the Knicks were so painful to watch last season. And 90% of their issues had to do not only with the spacing, but more so just the playmaking. The playmaking was so weak for the Knicks last season. And it's been so weak for years. Julius Randle oftentimes was found, like, any of the people who watch the Knicks would agree with me. There's not a player in the league you see dribble into a double team, do a weird spin move, and shoot up the ugliest shot more than Julius Randle in the NBA. And the problem was there's no playmaking to get him anywhere near the space he needs to be the type of player he is. When it comes to Brunson, that is literally why they signed this guy. I mean,
Yeah.
the same thing is true with RJ Barrett. As much as I love RJ, the weakest part of his game is his playmaking. Like, he really struggles to find a nice, clean, open shot sometimes, like on his own. He can't really make it yet in his career. But the reason I'm so high on him is because I see it coming. I feel like it's coming. This is one of those things that's going to propel that further much quicker. Having this guy who's going to have the court vision that he does. I
Hmm.
mean, realistically, the best point guard that RJ Barrett has played with so far. This is legitimately it's a tough question. Is it Elfrid Payton? What does that say about the team's point guard position? I mean, it's terrible. So I'm interested to see what Randall looks like. I'm really interested to see what RJ is going to be like with a guy like this on the court with him. So I can't help but be excited about this contract when you think of how much it's going to benefit the other guys around. And my biggest question with this contract is are people going to look back at this, and I might be just being a little too excited about my Knicks. I've been known. I'm not afraid to admit it. Are people going to look back and say, is this a little bit of an underpay? I don't think that's true. I'm just curious. I actually think it's more likely people look back and say it's an underpay than an overpay, like 6 months from now.
Yeah. I mean, if we look
Just
at
me.
this,
That's just me.
yeah, I mean, if we look at the stats for this year, I mean, they were, I believe, maybe they were 30th. I need to look a little bit in the stats, but from what I'm seeing, they were probably middle of the pack. They were probably lower in the pack to like dead last in their rankings in terms
Yeah,
of.
I mean, it was terrible. I mean, they were playing Alec Burks as their point guard most of the season, him or Quickly, and those guys are not point guards. One is a career anything but a point guard, basically, in Burks. So let's move on to the next one. And I'm going to throw this one out there because I think it's two guys and we can keep it short and simple because I think it's pretty easy. I'm just
Okay.
going to do two guys at once. Are you ready for it?
Sure. Go ahead.
Nikola Jokic,
All right. Nikola Jokic.
270 Supermax, 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
agency 2028. It's the largest contract in NBA history. All right.
Mm-hmm.
The second player, before I give any thoughts on Nikola Jokic, second player I'm going to throw into the same little group is $193 million extension years 2027 is his free agency. This is the rookie extension, unlike Jokic's.
For which player again?
These are for John Morant, excuse me.
John
John Morant
Morant
at
and Jokic.
the one,
Okay.
Nikola Jokic.
Okay.
These are easily worth it. Both of them.
Yep.
I don't even think
Yep.
it's a question. I think these are two of the better players in the league. They're
Mm-hmm.
ascending to get better, and they clearly team much better. I think John Morant is a little bit more of a question mark because of the Grizzlies' success with him off the court, but I just think that their team is good. I don't necessarily think that should take anything away from how good Ja is. These ones to me are just so easy. You give these guys whatever they want. They're in a caliber of player that
Mm-hmm.
clearly elevate every facet of your team. They're superstars on and off the court. They're worth
Yeah.
every penny. What do you think?
I mean, they are definitely worth every penny. I mean, you think about two guys that are franchise-changing players. I think for the Nuggets, they got to think about the other guys and figuring out if they're worth that money. Obviously with Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, and I think this year is going to be a prove it year for those two guys, especially. But if you look at the John Morant contract, and I'll focus on that one a little bit more, he is worth every single penny. He brings the tenacity, he brings the energy. Not only does he bring the value back in terms of merchandise and other things like that, you do understand when it comes to him that you have a potential chance to win a championship with the roster that you got. And I think that when you have that, you have John Morant getting the money that he does. That is definitely something where you're looking at it, and he's going to be getting better each and every year. He's so athletic. He's so gifted as an offensive talent. Obviously, the 3-point shooting is getting better. It's still working on it. It's a work in progress, but you can clearly see that there's something there with him. And so, I honestly would like to see, maybe in the future he'll probably make a little bit more than that. I think he probably will. He continues to continue that elevation of his game each and every time he comes on the court. I like I said, I'm a huge fan of John Morant. I think that the Grizzlies have a special player in him, and so he's worth every single penny. I don't think that anyone would disagree that John Morant is not worth the money that he's making right now. But and then Jokic as well. And then Cluck, you kind of said here, Jokic never going to win though, at least not there.
two together. I wouldn't. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I really wouldn't. I mean, Jokic he's a different animal, man. He really is. He is almost incomparable to any player at his position, maybe in the history of the NBA, due to his skill set. He does not really play like any other center in the league. And he honestly opens up a lot of avenues to team building. Like, that's the reason why, to me, if you're Denver in the small market that you are, people in Denver can't even watch Nuggets games based on some of the licensing issues with that team. He is worth every penny. If he wants to stay in your small market and continue to make you a contender on his own, like he's literally been playing with role players only for 2 straight seasons.
Yeah.
This dude is a different beast. He can play 5 on defense. He can play the 5 on offense. He can play any position, maybe other than a wing. Like he is, but he's 7'2" and 310 or whatever he is. He's huge. But like, think of the different look you can make. Like, we're saying that kind of a middle of the road, but maybe above middle of the road point guard in Jalen Brunson is worth $26 million a year, right?
Right.
Jokic, by all accounts, I think you'd be nuts to say, even as a point guard, he's not leagues and leagues above better than Jalen Brunson is. He's better at being a point guard than Jalen Brunson is, who that's exclusively what he does as a player. The problem is Jokic is also a 5. I mean, he is anything you want him to be. So it just opens up avenues in terms of, do you need to pay a super high paid point guard on the squad? Do you ever need to do that if you have a guy like Jokic? You probably don't. Like, you could, but it's not necessary. And one thing that's super underrated about Jokic is his defense only gets better. Every single season, he gets better on defense. He was one of the better defenders in the league last season. And that coming from maybe 5 seasons ago, I mean, he was awful on defense. So I think that Jokic makes the Nuggets contenders every year. It's genuinely a question of, can he have any healthy players on the team with him? Any. We'll see, but I say you pay him. He's one of the 5 best players in the league. You pay those guys.
My goodness.
Screaming at you.
I know. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think that he is worth the money, and I think that, I think you can build a contender around him. I just think the question for me is, can those guys stay healthy that are around him? You talk about guys like Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray is more ACL. You're going to figure out this year if he's a health concern or not. My health concern for what I'm seeing right now is Michael Porter Jr. I mean, like, the guy clearly has issues in the back that are concerning, that are clearly hurting him in many different ways. And, will it prevent him from playing basketball? Because, you pay this guy like he's supposed to be the next guy, right? He's a wing that can do a lot of different things on the court, especially offensively. That's the guy that you want, that type of wing. But you could clearly see that he's hurt, and he continues to be hurt each and every year. And so now, as the Nuggets continue to look at their future and figure out what they're trying to do, you need to figure out if Michael Porter Jr. can stay healthy for a season to help you beat contending. Because if you think about that series, against the Warriors just a couple months ago when they were playing against each other, it was not fair. It was not a fair battle with just Jokic kind of going on it on his own, and basically going with some role players. And so I think that we'll find out in the future from this team what they're capable of. Again, I like Jokic. I think he's a great player, but it's about the guys around him. And so maybe in terms of price, you could say maybe overpay, because you would hope that maybe the money that he would make would go to other guys that maybe you could bring in that could help you win a championship. But you could also argue that he is paid at the right price, because of the fact that he brings so much value offensively, brings so much value to the team. And like you said, defense is improving every year. So I definitely agree with that statement.
Yeah, I see. The last thing I'll say for Jokic, I would say the same thing for John Morant. I don't really think you can overpay those type of players. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Based on how the business works of the NBA, how contracts work, cap space, everything. You cannot overpay those guys. That's
Yeah.
that's the difference between Beal, for example, and these guys. The difference is
Mm-hmm.
Nikola Jokic, with an even worse team than Bradley Beal in Washington, has taken his team to the playoffs for the last 3 seasons, right? Arguably, I would say it's not even close, the level of role players on those teams. Like, Wizards are bad too, but the rest of the dudes on Denver last season, if you watched any of that team, were really, really not good, and they still made it to the playoffs pretty easily. So that means something. And the dude is back-to-back MVP. You know, he's a back-to-back MVP.
Mm-hmm.
You pay that dude whatever he's worth. And John Morant was right there in the discussion too. He was top 5 MVP for most of the season last year until he got hurt. So those guys, you pay them whatever they're worth. You want to move into some potential contract extensions, or are there any more that have happened that you want to talk about?
The only one I want to talk about, and then we can kind of move on.
Yeah.
Really quick, is just the I want to talk about Mo Bamba. So a little bit Mo Bamba. I know that's crazy,
Okay.
crazy kind of thing to talk about, but let's talk about his contract extension. He signed a 2-year, $20 million contract with the Orlando Magic. Becomes unrestricted free agent at the age of 26. We look at this contract, cap hit going to be about, making about 10 mil in a year. So do you think that that's a overpay, underpay, the right amount?
Give me the number one more time.
It is a 2-year, $20 million deal, basically. And he's going to be averaging 10 a year. Overpay, underpay?
I'm gonna add one more player into our discussion just to compare and contrast why I think Mo Bamba is probably worth it.
Ayton?
All right. I was gonna say Bagley.
Marvin Bagley.
I'm gonna say Bag. They play the same position.
Mhm.
Marvin Bagley is more of a 4. I do think he slides into 5 sometimes, but he's more of a 4. Bamba's a traditional 5. Maybe not a traditional 5, but he's definitely a 5. That being said, Marvin Bagley is making 3 years, $37 million. That's the extension that the Detroit Pistons gave him. I don't know if there's a soul on earth who watches basketball that would say that's not an overpay. Bagley was better last season, but it's an overpay. If that was the market for Bagley, which we have to make some assumptions that the Pistons were competing against somebody, right?
Yeah.
I think Mo Bamba's definitely worth 2 for 20. Like, he's been a 90% an underperformer since he was drafted number 7 overall, I believe. But the difference is last season he really showed some improvement. His 3-point shooting was a little bit more consistent. He was on the court a lot more.
Yeah.
I like Bamba. I do. The only problem is he worth that much for this team? Is he worth that much for Orlando? And that part of things, I would argue he probably isn't, because I think they have enough players play similar positions to him, and there's guys you would want out on the court to develop their games more than him. He's probably, like, in terms of the bigs on that team, I mean, he's definitely not in the top 3 bigs that you would want to give you minutes on that squad. It's Paolo, it's Franz, I would put Wendell Carter Jr. above him too. He's worth it, just not for that. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the positions really quick, they have Wendell Carter Jr. there for a year, $50 million deal. Mo Bamba at Bol. And then, of course, they got their guy Wagner, who's kind of their big draft pick. I believe this guy. Oh, never mind. This is his brother. I think.
Yeah, they have Mo and they have Franz.
Yeah, Franz and Mo. Franz being more of a small forward. And so I think that when I look at it, I think it's a good calculated risk by the Orlando Magic. And I think it's a good contract because if you think about it, he improved last year. He
really
it's
did.
Small improvements, but every year that he's been on the court, he's been improving since his 2018 rookie year. Played 71 games last year compared to 46 the year prior, and before that it was 62. So he's starting to play a lot more games, starting to be a lot more healthier, and I just think that for some guys, it takes a while before they're NBA ready, right? We talk about NBA body, having that grown man body that LeVar Ball likes to talk about. with his sons, and how Lamelo needs to develop that, and he probably will in the next couple of years. But you saw the difference from Lonzo Ball in his rookie year to where he's at right now, where he's a lot stronger and can is probably one of the best defenders in the NBA. And I think it's going to happen for Mo Bamba. Not saying that he's going to be a tremendously great center, like he's going to be a game changing type of player, but he will improve as a player each and every year because I think that he does have something in him. 38% from 3-point is no joke and nothing to sneeze at, even if it's low numbers. It just means that he can be a guy that if you do decide to pick and pop or ghost to screens with him, like he will be able to do it. And so I think that when it comes to a guy like Mo Bamba, when it comes to that team, I just think that it's a perfect contract for them, and I just think that they need to start looking at, you know, what they can do to kind of utilize him more in that offense, and maybe not more in the offense, more so utilize him with the second unit or even the first unit if they decide to kind of have him be there with them.
Yeah, I like Bamba. I mean, I would pay him this much. I think if you're over 7 foot and you can shoot threes, and he's a pretty skilled dude. And one of the things with Orlando that I don't think people talk about enough, they were pretty good the second half of the season relative to like the level of talent they had on the team.
Yeah.
They were one of the better defensive teams in the NBA for like a significant stretch of the second half of the season. And a lot of that had to do not only with Markelle Fultz coming back, but Bamba and a lot of the guys that did get better. They really did. So I like Bamba a lot. I like that extension. That was a weird choice. I'll throw one more that happened that we can actually just talk about briefly. Let's talk about, oh my gosh, dude, I'm fumbling the bag here. I'm
Deontay
fumbling
Johnson.
the bag. No. We need to talk about Harden. James That's
Harden.
the person. This is maybe one of the better examples of just, I think, a good contract extension this offseason, a reasonable contract extension on both sides.
Yep.
Both sides win in this situation with the Harden extension. Harden wins because it's one of the few things that's happened in the last few years that makes him look good, especially just in terms of being a team player. But in the NBA in general, he's made a lot of bad choices the last few seasons. More importantly, it shows that the gamble that the 76ers took on trading for him in the first place was worth it. There was clearly enough trust between him and Daryl Morey to make a deal like this that benefits everybody. And this is what Harden's worth. I would actually say it's a borderline underpay, but for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Like, he should be making more by the standards of who he is in the league that we're in. It's a win of an underpay for everybody. So I really like this extension. I just wanted to throw it out there because I think it's one of the lower extensions in terms of big named players, but it's a huge win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely agree with that. I think that when you look at the contract that he's making, the money that he's making, I mean, it's a good contract. It's a great contract extension. You're not overpaying him. This to me kind of it feels like if we were back in 2013, this is like the LeBron James money that you would pay for his contract extension. And I think that that's probably fair. Again, James Harden is not going to be the scorer that he once was in Houston when he was winning those MVPs of those 2 years. He's going to be a solid player. He's going to be more of a playmaking facilitator rather than a playmaking scorer. And so I think, like I said, I think they're one piece away from being a really good competitive team. But what you can also say about them as well is the fact that when we look at James Harden, when we look at the players that are around him, and the fact that you could potentially bring someone else, this has got to be the price is right for the 76ers. I definitely agree with that statement.
1,000%. And one of the biggest thing with this contract, the last thing I'll say for this one before we move into some potential extensions, and we'll talk about those more in depth. What do you think of James Harden at this point in his career, no matter how diminished he is in comparison to the Harden that was MVP, that was scoring almost 40 points a game for stretches of his career? This is the right price for how good this version of Harden is. He's still a really good player in the league. The problem is people still compare him to the Harden that is, the non-athletically diminished Harden, which is that's not the timeline we live in right now. He is athletically compromised compared to where he was a few seasons ago.
Yeah.
The difference is a player like Harden, he's still so skilled that he can oftentimes still be one of the better players on the court for you. He
Yeah,
still
exactly.
can be. And when you have a guy like Embiid who clogs up the paint, probably, I mean, he's probably the top 3 or 4 defenders in the NBA right now. I know, especially at his position, he's probably the best defender in the NBA as a center. I mean, he takes a lot of pressure off of somebody like James Harden. The
Yeah.
interesting thing with this team is like how they can, cover up a couple more of his little flaws. But as a playmaker,
Hmm.
as the point guard for this team, you cannot go wrong with the price for this deal for Harden.
Yeah.
And you just never know, like the mentality it takes to take less money when you're that famous, that big of a player, and that well known, established.
Hmm.
I give Harden a lot of credit. I really do. I didn't think he was capable. We've talked about this on this channel to death at this point. I didn't think
Hmm.
he was capable of doing this. I, I'm interested to see how it influences play on the court because I really do think if he is accepting that he's at a different stage of his career, we're going to see a better version of Harden because he's going to lean into the things he's good at.
Hmm.
So I like this a lot, but we can move into some potential deals.
Yeah, I mean, let's move into some potential deals. I mean, let's talk about a player that has been polarizing basically to the whole public, and that's Kyrie Irving. Obviously, opted into his
Ooh.
contract to this year. So going from going to be making the last bit of it, which is 36 mil. If we look at kind of what's projected for him, and I'm assuming he probably wants that Lillard deal.
Jeez,
Do you
no.
think that he's worth the Lillard deal?
God, no. Not a no circumstances would I pay him that much money. I wouldn't have paid Lillard that much money. I guess we should have talked about Lillard. That
Yeah,
is
we can talk
that
about both players
extension.
at the same time.
Yeah, you have to be a top 5 player on both sides of the court to make $60+ million a year. You do. You just have to be. Because now, even just comparing Lillard's contract to Jokic, they're now the 2 highest paid players in NBA history
Mm-hmm.
currently, right? It'll clearly get outdone sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
That being said, you have to compare them to each other. There is no circumstance in which, at this point in his career, with the last couple seasons of track record, Damian Lillard should make as much as Nikola Jokic. I just
Yeah.
don't think that that's reasonable, right? But even then, Dame Lillard, well worth that in comparison to someone like Kyrie Irving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I Kyrie on a skill set basis is clearly he's worth whatever you want to give him. So like whatever it takes to sign a guy who has a skill set that Kyrie does, he's worth that amount of money. The problem is that's not the only thing that comes attached to Kyrie Irving. I mean, by all the rumors that have come out, especially within the last week about Kyrie Irving, there was a max deal offered to Kyrie Irving Nets, right? That I don't know if that's
Mm-hmm.
confirmed, but I've heard that a lot of places. There was a max deal offered to Kyrie with the caveat that there was a games played restriction on how much money he could make, right? If he had games
Mm-hmm.
played, he would not, he would get the max, right, for that season or whatever that part of the
Mm-hmm.
contract was. And he did not accept it based on that legislation. That to me tells you everything you need to know. If willing to come in and be, play the amount of minutes it takes to be a max player and take your team as far as you go, they're not worth the max.
Mm-hmm.
Pay the max to players who, are capable of taking you to the prominent. That's literally what it's for.
Yeah.
And that guy, he's just not that guy. If he if he signed extension, he signed the max and signed games played, I probably would change my opinion on him a little bit because then I would say maybe the last few seasons really just were weird.
Yeah.
And they were weird, but they were weird in terms of, COVID and the vaccine restrictions and stuff like that. And it really wasn't his fault all the way through. None of those same rules apply, right? So now you have to question what
Mm-hmm.
really is his holdup with the game restriction part of it. You have to wonder. I don't
Yeah.
even think it's a question anymore that it has to do with COVID or vaccines or any of that stuff, man. It just doesn't have to do with that. This guy is
Yeah.
not as locked in as
Mm-hmm.
his contemporaries. So I wouldn't pay him the max either, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think the frustrating part about Kyrie is that he hasn't played 70 games since 2016 and hasn't even played 60 games until 2018. And so there's definitely,
Think about that. More
you
than
know,
half a decade.
and so like when you think about it from that perspective of okay, hasn't played, 70 games since they won the championship that year, it has to tell you that he's just not a guy that you can be like, okay, we want to give you the max and be, no restrictions, no nothing, because clearly he's shown that there's other things on his mind that he wants to do. And again, I am perfectly a-okay with somebody doing that. I don't think we should hold that against him. But what he shouldn't expect is expecting this huge contract extension, not playing the amount of games that he should be playing or playing the amount of minutes that he should be playing. And not only is it that stuff, it's also the injury history that he's had before, playing hurt and then coming back into the lineups. I mean, I find it frustrating as someone that really enjoys Kyrie Irving's game and the way that he plays. He's an artist, like I get that, but you can also be critical of Kyrie Irving from this sense of you need to make sure that you are not basically taking. No, you're not taking advantage because it's an NBA team. Owners they get away with a lot of stuff, so the players can too. But it has to be a two-way street for me personally. Like both the players and the teams have to be
Mm-hmm.
equally fair with one another in a sense where okay, I'm going to play this amount of games, but I also want to do this. And I think the team has to be like, okay, that's fine. If you want to do that, that's fine. And I just feel like for both of these teams, they're both team and player, there's
Mm-hmm.
not that sense of balance or respect for one another. Of okay, I want to do my thing, but for Kyrie Irving, it's like I want to do my own thing, but on my own schedule. Basically, he wants to be an independent contractor, where he where I think the team wants him to be part of the team. And the thing with
Sure.
Kyrie Irving is that this is a team sport. So you can't necessarily say, "Oh, I'm going to take today off because I'm doing this or this." Or, for example, the birthday party incident where he went to his sister's
Yeah.
birthday party, obviously during the height of the vid, of the coof. And, just kind of and then kind of basically everyone was just like what the heck are you doing, and then it was like, oh well, it's just with my family and friends and other things like that, and it doesn't really matter. You shouldn't be throwing parties from that sense when you need to be playing basketball. And it's not a sense of, oh, he always needs to be playing basketball 100% of the time all the time, but you can't just expect to miss
Yes.
games and then just be like, well, it's not my fault. I'm doing my part when you only played 29 games. Think about that. 29 games last year. And then the first year in Brooklyn where he got hurt, 20 games. So, and to me, this is a historical pattern with Kyrie Irving, unless he's with LeBron James. If he's with LeBron James, I have no doubts in my mind that he can guide Kyrie Irving back to the right direction, or maybe not the right direction is the right word, but he can at least guide Kyrie Irving to be playing at least 72 games, 60 plus games is what I'm expecting Kyrie Irving to play. Because obviously he's shown that he's injury prone, and that's fine. But if he can show that he can play 60 games a season and then get into the playoffs and play tremendous basketball, I have no issues there. But he continues to prove time and time again that he cannot stay healthy and that there's other things on his mind. So that's kind of where I'm at with Kyrie Irving currently.
Yeah. I mean, I'm taking it. If you take advantage of the team, that's one thing, right? Not the team, but the front office and the owners, right? Who cares? In my opinion, right? They deserve to be taken advantage of to a certain extent. That's kind of what they're there for, the big business. They're there to pay salaries, right? Get every penny you can get from the team. The question is, are you taking advantage of the rest of your team? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at Brooklyn, they clearly mostly did not respond very well to what he was doing. Like
Yeah.
James Harden, that is the reason he pushed his way out of Brooklyn so hard, is because of the Kyrie situation. You look at how unhappy that team was and how poorly they performed. And then you have reports of, Kevin Durant was making calls going into the playoffs, talking to people saying, dude, we're gonna get cooked, and then what happens? They got cooked by the Celtics. So
Yeah.
you have to question not only just the games played, but what does he do for the chemistry of your team? I mean, look at your Celtics team, Bernie, from a few seasons ago. That
Yeah.
team crumbled because of, the locker room stuff and all the questions surrounding that team. I think you'd have to be nuts to pay that much money. But the only team, and like you said, The only team that would pay this pay this guy a max, and it would make sense for everybody is the Lakers. It really would make sense for everybody involved.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely has to be the Lakers.
more, they're the only team. Any other team in the league, why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself? You know, unless you're just an absolute zero. But that's the thing with the league right now. I don't think there's any team that's an absolute zero. There's
Yeah,
no team that's working up from a zero. Like the Lakers might be the only one, and that's purely like their chemistry is a zero.
yeah,
So you can't get worse in that regard with them. So I like it for that, or like him for them. But besides that, no way, no
yeah.
way.
All right. Let me see if there's one more player that I want to do before we get to the big guy. Let's see here.
Let me ask you one while you look.
All right.
While you look, I got
Yeah,
one.
go ahead.
About what about what about Jordan Poole? What about Jordan Poole, Bernie?
Pool party.
What do you think? Because he's not up yet. He's not up yet. But on this team, and we'll probably talk about Draymond and Wiggins a little bit too, right?
Right.
Maybe we can talk about all. Maybe we can just talk about all the Warriors right now because
Yeah.
there's like 4 of them. Poole is a big question. I would honestly argue, and let's just throw Draymond and Klay Thompson into this discussion right now, right?
Okay.
Because I think it's fair to ask the same question about all of them. If you're going to pay these guys a huge bump in their pay,
Yeah.
which one of them would you want to pay right now in their career on the trajectory that they're going?
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that Poole is the guy you want to pay. He's the most important one to pay long term out of the guys you have that are up for extension. The question is, what is his deal going to look like? What's reasonable for Jordan Poole? And I think that we just got a pretty good example of a deal for Poole. Like the Anthony Simons Portland deal, I feel like is super fair for Jordan Poole. And if you could get that extension for him, the 4 for 100, I think that's what it is. It's 4 for 100, 25 average, 25 mil a year average. That's more than fair, in my opinion, especially the trajectory that Poole is going. The only thing I'll say for Poole is I wouldn't do it right yet. I would wait through the season to see. That's a because he could outperform even last 100 mil, because he definitely had stretches where I don't think people would be saying they would take Anthony Simons over Jordan Poole at certain points of last season. So the question is, do you gamble on him right now? Because there was some pretty questionable decision making in the playoffs. He did play himself off the court at certain points. And defensively, I have to keep the same energy I did with people like Beal. Defensively, he's like a zero borderline. He is awful on defense.
He's a struggle bus on defense.
So you need to see some pretty improvement, but I would gamble that's what you need to wait and see. Wait and see this season. Is his defense going to get better? Is he going to put more effort into it? But everything you've seen so far, what do you think Jordan Poole is worth, Bernie?
I mean, we look at the rookie extension eligibility. I mean, he could make potentially 5-year, 188 million for
but would you pay him that much from what you've seen?
No, I'd probably pay him at the ballpark range of like 15, probably 15 million, 15 to 20. Because I think that offensively, he's really gifted. I think you could clearly see that he definitely adds a dynamic that was missing for the Warriors. And you could clearly see from the year that everybody was basically hurt from that Warriors team to where they were at this year where they won the championship. He clearly added some things during the regular season. It's when it got to the playoffs where I didn't really notice Poole as much. And it's to your point exactly. The defense is not there. And you can have, and maybe calling Curry a liability is a rude term to use for him, but he's a guy that you kind of put in that safety. You put him in the safety position, right? To ball hawk and kind of go for steals and things like that. He's not necessarily going to be a great one-on-one defender. And that's not even how the Warriors play defense anyway. They play it very spaced out, very, I would say, trying to think of the right word. Basically, what it would do is that you would basically invite the drive in. You would have Draymond Green kind of step up, be the whole guy, and then you would have the guy that was guarding the person there, which is like peel out and go to a different person. And you can clearly see that you can do that for so long as one, Draymond Green is healthy and playing prime Draymond Green, and two, you cannot have more than one liability on defense in that sense. And so, from my perspective, I don't think that Poole is necessarily worth the max extension. And if he does get signed to the extension, I think you could say goodbye to both Klay Thompson and Draymond Green if that's the case, because the owner has clearly stated and clearly has kind of closed the window on this Golden State Warriors dynasty, because you can clearly see that he's frustrated and probably tired of paying the max or paying the luxury tax. I think anybody would be if you had to pay that much to keep those guys on your roster. And so I think personally, Pete, I probably would not pay Jordan Poole the extension. I would probably try to get him at about, I'd probably say that 15 to 20 is probably where he's at in his career right now. Not saying that he could never be a player, that could get to this point of, a max salary, but I think you'd be foolish to pay that much for him because I don't think anybody in the league, maybe besides the Warriors, and even then the Warriors I don't think believe in it, they don't view him as a max player. And he's clearly on defense.
Yeah, but he's 22, right?
23. He's going to be 23 this year. But I still think that I don't think anybody would pay that much for him unless you think that his offense is that good that he would be a number one on any other team. And I just don't see that from Jordan Poole personally.
And then you have to question, like, the reason Klay and Steph are, iconically a great duo is because Klay does mask Curry's weaknesses, right? For sure. And vice versa, right? Like he was such a good defender in his prime that you could play the two of them together the whole game, and it didn't matter how bad Curry's defense was early on, This is my question, right? If you extend Draymond for the max, which I think both of us would say would be a wild overpay at this point in Draymond's career, don't you agree?
At this point in his career, to a max?
Like the deal that he wants, you think that's an overpay, don't you think?
So what does he want? He wants like a 50. Can't remember what it was. He wanted a big payday.
Thought it was somewhere between. He wants a max extension worth a total of 164 over the next 5 seasons. That's a lot of money. That's truly a lot of money, right? The question is this: if they pay Draymond that max extension, if they extend Klay, which by all accounts, one of those two dudes is definitely, almost certainly, if I had to bet my life, if I had a gun to my head, I would probably pick both of them to get their max extensions, and the Warriors just keep this until, the sun sets on all of them and it's just not good anymore, right? The question is this: if you extend both of them, you probably can't extend Poole, you can't extend Wiggins. So then you're just gambling everything on, the 3 old vets, the 3 amigos of this team, basically. And you're certainly weakening any chance you have to contend in like 3 or 4 years, right? You just can't contend if that's your squad. The reason that I would probably pay Poole, because I don't think any team could get Poole on a $15 to $20 million deal right now. Like, I just don't think that that's what players like him are worth right now. Like, I think he's worth more than that. Whether it's fair or not, he's probably going to get more than that. The question is, are the Warriors willing to leverage their future for this situation? And I think it seems like the Warriors tend to make the tough choice. Like, they want to compete for a long time. So, I don't know, man. I would probably be tempted to give Poole the extension, like a reasonable, not the max, 180, 188 or whatever it is for him. That's crazy. That's crazy. You not be that weak on defense. You can't get played off the court like that and be worth the much. I mean, I think Rudy Gobert at times would like to argue with what I just said, but he's also 7 foot tall, so there's a big difference between the two. Yeah. Man, what about Wiggins, Bernie? What about Wiggins? What would you give him? What's a fair deal for him in his career right now?
Andrew Wiggins. Let me see if he. Just need to look at his contract really quick, and then I can kind of make.
While you look.
Okay, I have it right here.
The thing with Wiggs is, like, I think he benefited so greatly from the system that I'm still not sure how much it is. I can't help but just still question, and maybe that's not fair because he was really their second best player in the finals. He truly was. I have to question, is he really the second best player on the team, or was it the system, the fit, where people are looking like in terms of the other guys on the court? Was he just benefiting so greatly from that? Difference is just defensively, he gives you such a boost in terms of what he can do. I mean, he put some clamps on Tatum for a while, so I'm not sure what he's worth. He's kind of one of the tougher guys in the entire NBA to determine what he's really worth.
Yeah, I'm trying to really quick look at it. So he wants to, let's see here. So he's able to earn a maximum of 24 million over his 4-year contract. No, that's not what we look. He is set to receive 31. To date, 35 million according to net worth. I mean, we don't really care about net worth because that could be a lot of different things. It's hard because I think Andrew Wiggins is the most, I would say, most interesting player in the world at this current moment because, like you said, he is going to be making $33 million this coming year. And then after next year, he's an unrestricted free agent. I think he probably makes about the same, and I think that'd be fair. The question is, and it comes back to the Warriors, are they going to be willing to pay that contract extension? It comes back to kind of the Draymond Green, which I kind of want to talk about a little bit from the fact that, Draymond Green right now, if you take him off the team, I think that it does change your dynamic of your team dramatically with the way that they play defense, with the way that they play offense. I think it changes everything. And so I think this is kind of the reason why I don't believe that Draymond Green will get his contract extension, and I don't think that Andrew Wiggins will get it from the Golden State Warriors. I think he's probably going to get it from a different team, a team probably contending, or maybe a team where he can kind of be like the second or third guy, just to see if he, has improved since his rookie year and since his days in Minnesota of like being able to kind of be on a team where he is that person. And the reason why I say this, Pete, is because I think that the dynasty of the Warriors is coming to an end, not because of the fact that they can't pay them. It's just the owners don't want to pay that contract extension for any of these guys. And so I think Draymond Green's salary right now of $24 million as an average is probably about fair. But the problem is that he wants more than that, right? I think he wants like 5 years, 160 something. I can't see in any world where the Warriors are paying that much for him. And then vice versa for the Golden State Warriors. If Andrew Wiggins is the guy that you pay, he's making $33 million right now. I cannot see in any facet of the game where the Warriors are paying that much for him. Because I think the Warriors are done. Not done in terms of all the dynasty's dead, but because the owner is tired of paying the luxury tax. And it goes back to that luxury tax situation, P. And I hate to keep bringing it up all the time, but the owner's tired. He's tired, Grandpa. Like he's tired of paying that much money for guys that again Sean, hang on. All right, I'll acknowledge you. Jeez, Draymond Green is not worth the max. Most overrated player of all time. And Andrew Wiggins is elite. People need to stop hating. He may not be elite in any single category, but he's such an elite all-around ball player that he is elite. And then acknowledge me is the final thing he said. But yeah, I mean, and then I'll let you kind of respond to that, Peter, in a second. But again, I cannot at this point say that the price is right for both Green and Wiggins at this current moment for the contracts that they want. Currently, I think it's great value where they're at. But Draymond Green wants to make that final bang for his buck before he hangs up the sneakers. And you could say the same thing about Andrew Wiggins. Like maybe Andrew Wiggins is a little bit younger. I think he's 27 years old. So he's gonna want that one big last contract in case it doesn't work out, and he can just make the money that he thinks he deserves from having a great NBA Finals. I don't know if you want.
Yeah, they're in a conundrum. They just. They're in a tough spot, like they're at two different crossroads, and they've kind of set themselves up for this the last few seasons. I think purposefully so, in terms of having tons of young assets, young players who are developing, and these old guys they've had for a while, the core of the squad. They're going to have to make an unpopular decision one way or the other. They just have no choice but to either pay. Like the response that the league would have to them giving a max to Draymond Green at this point in his career, I would be very interested to see because he's not worth it. He's just not. You
Mm-hmm.
know, no matter what you think, if you think he's overrated, I don't really think he's overrated personally. I think Draymond Green is an incredibly good player. He's one
Mm-hmm.
of the most unique players ever in the NBA. What he gives you as a team, like you could see it down the stretch in the Celtics series. He kind of started getting it back a little bit in that Celtics series.
Yeah.
You could just see like it's draining for the other team to go against him. He's just such a strange player. What he does to you mentally, how hard he makes you work. It's tough. It's tough. The problem is physically, he's just not going to be able to be the guy he's been his whole career. He really had
Mm-hmm.
major stretches of this last season where he athletically was not there. So you can't give him the max, but they might be based on purely loyalty. Like this guy's been with you for all these championships. I would bet that this team is going to do like mixed blow it up rebuild, not a rebuild, but like a reset, I guess is more the word, right? Where they maybe ship Draymond for something after the season, maybe even Clay too, depending on, what his extension looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just keep Curry and young dudes. I would gamble that was out of the four names we've been talking about, Wiggins, Poole, Draymond, Clay. I think Wiggins is the most likely to get the extension with the team based on his age, how important he is in terms of all the things he can do. Because that's where I'll agree with Sean. He's not elite. Wiggins is not elite. I'm sorry. He's just not. Not yet. Maybe he is next season. Maybe he's just getting this much better right now in his career. He's not elite. He's just really good at a lot of things, which is still
Mm-hmm.
super duper valuable. It's super valuable. So I think let's use our little term of the month, the timeline. Wiggins makes more sense in terms of competing for the next 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
which by all accounts is what they want to do, not pay the luxury. You just have to get young. I'm actually interested to see what this team does, like in terms of do they package Draymond and some of their younger guys or picks to not only get younger, but get a guy that makes more sense to pay the max. Because they could position themselves
Mm-hmm.
with all the assets they have to do that. So
Yeah.
I do feel like we've talked about them forever, but they're interesting because this could be like a last dance type situation for the
Yeah.
Warriors based on contracts alone.
You can't name me 10 NBA players more well rounded than Andrew Wiggins.
I think I probably could, but I won't do it right now for the time factor of where we're at. Maybe that should be our next stream, Bernie. Maybe we should list every NBA player until we get to Wiggins.
Yeah. So we get to Andrew
I
Wiggins.
think we
Some podal.
yeah, I think we'd do that. I think we could get it. Just for Sean, we'll do a Wiggins ranking.
Wiggins ranking. Okay, I'm down for that. But again, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Warriors? I know we weren't really planning to talk about them to ad nauseum, but I do think it's a very interesting conversation, like you said, Pete, to kind of figure out, what is this team's option? Is the price right for those 3-4 guys that are coming up in free agency? We know that Curry got his Warrior deal done relatively quick. Now it's a question of, is this the last dance for the Golden State Warriors? So, like I said, let us know in the comment section down below. Who do you think the Warriors are going to be doing this offseason? Are they going to be keeping these guys, or are they going to say sayonara? All right, let's go to our last guy and kind of the final topic of the day and kind of to our title of the video. So glad you guys stuck around for that. That's how we lure you guys in with some clickbait titles. Let's look at LeBron James. LeBron James obviously
Yeah.
has signed a big contract the last couple of years. Kind of taking 2-year deals each and every time. This year, these last 2 years, he's been earning about $43 million every season. And now the potential rumor is that LeBron James is going to be eligible for a 2-year, $97.1 million deal. Basically, if you think about it, it's 2 years, $50 million for each year that he plays. The question I have for you, Pete, and the question that I think for the audience that's out there listening, whether you're watching it live here on The Charge, again, bringing the latest NBA news and rumors are also basketball opinions, or whether you're watching it posts and I make this a chopped up video. Is LeBron James, and I'm going to ask you first since I've been talking for so long, is LeBron James worth this contract that he's going to get being paid by the Lakers? And number two, Are the Lakers going to screw this up by not giving him his money and not trading away the pick that they need to get Kyrie Irving? Because I feel like the pick is really what's holding back this team, and I just feel like the Lakers right now are in such a huge conundrum. And I want to hear your opinion on the LeBron James contract. Is it the right value or not?
Okay, so this is where we're going to get controversial. I kind of forewarned that my take on this probably I know people in our stream in particular, some of our longtime viewers are going to disagree with me, and I don't care because I feel pretty strongly about this. I would consider LeBron in the same category. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy, but I genuinely feel this way. I think you pay this dude whatever he wants to be paid to be on your team. I really do. He's still, because you have to think business wise, right? What does he do to bring money to your franchise? It's incomparable to the rest of the league in terms of players. He's on a level of superstar that none of the NBA is close to. Maybe even Durant, but that's not really what we're talking about. So beyond even that, just his play on court, right? Whatever people think of LeBron as a player, whether he's falling off, whatever the case may be, LeBron is as close to an ageless player we might ever see in the league. Because realistically, in my opinion, from what I've seen from LeBron, he can play as long as he wants to play. Nobody is in as good a shape as him at the age he's in. We've never seen it before. Yeah. So people compare him and where he's at age-wise and the change in his athleticism, which is like diminished. Like even if you were to compare his as a diminishment to somebody like Harden, it's incomparable. He still can do things he could do when he was 30. He really can. But the biggest thing with LeBron, and this is why I would pay him whatever he wants, right? It's kind of in a strange way similar to what we talked about with Brunson.
Okay. Interesting.
What he brings you on the court, in terms of stability, in terms of just being a general like LeBron, you basically have a second head coach on your team. And that has worked against teams with LeBron, and it's worked great for teams with LeBron in the past.
Okay.
Play position on the court. He knows how to play the position better than anybody on the court, and he can teach guys on the team how to play the position to the best of their ability by putting them in the right spots, right? If you get LeBron for 2 years, 97, which I will go back to your original question in terms of the Lakers, are they going to screw it up? I think they're in one of the worst spots possible because he's not going to sign that extension. He won't sign it. Like, he's going to do what he's done his whole career. He's going to wait until his deal is up. He can do whatever he wants because he'll have unlimited leverage at that point.
Yeah.
Even at 40 years old, there's not going to be players in the league better than LeBron. There's just not. I just haven't seen anything that tells me he's going to fall off that much.
Yeah.
The Lakers have just put themselves in such a bad spot because they really this is what you had to expect with LeBron. We've talked about this even when they signed him. We questioned how long it would be there, if it was a stop along the ride. If he was going to, there's a lot of discussion if he's going to go back to Cleveland out there too. He's the type of guy. Again, I'll say it. You give him what he wants.
Okay. Nope, I think he cut out for me. Let's see here. I think he's in the middle of a rant, and I don't think it's going to cut through.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I guess I'll just wrap it up. What I was getting at, I just think he is the ultimate chess piece in terms of an NBA player where he's at right now. If you need a 5, if that's all you're missing is 5. I mean, what did we see him do last season when Anthony Davis was gone? He was playing almost better basketball than ever in his career as a 5 for that team and putting the whole team on his back. A team that was underperforming by 10 degrees of where they should have been, right? He was still the best player on the court. He was playing the 5, and he was really good at it, creating situations for all the other guys on the court where they could still win some games with that terrible roster. So, I mean, he's still a top 10 player to me. I think you're out of your mind if you think he's not a top 10 player. As long as you're top 10, top 15, you get what you're worth. The difference is he's a coach on the court. He helps you win. If you put a good roster around this guy, like for example, right? I think let's just say you switched him and Chris Paul on Phoenix. And I know I'm not really comparing them directly player to player, but let's just say you put LeBron in Chris Paul's position.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any team you would pick over them? Is there any team you pick over them?
Probably not.
Really like Phoenix's roster that much.
Maybe the Warriors. I'll probably pick the Warriors, to be honest.
Maybe. I mean, it would be a fair discussion, but just like the difference of him being around the players, which people always use as an insult, like they think he needs all this help. But dude, that's just the he is. You know, you put any assets around this guy that can, you know, give him a little bit more room to work, and he'll do whatever you need to win games. You know, I'm just, man, I don't know. I hate to keep going on this rant because people, you know, people are so anti-LeBron, but he really was one of the best players in the league last season. Whether you like him or not, he's 38. It didn't look like it was going to go away either. So until I see anything that leads me to believe he's not a top 15 player, I would give him whatever he wants. That's just me.
Yeah, I think when it comes to Kyrie Irving, I think Kyrie Irving. I got it in my mind. LeBron James. When it comes to LeBron James, I think he is worth every single penny, like you said. I think that he is worth the money that you pay for him, the 50 mil plus that you are going to sign him for. You know, whether the Lakers do it or whether another team does it, he's obviously worth the money. I think what this comes down to for me is that the Lakers have put themselves in such a predicament chasing that NBA championship ring. And again, it's worth it, right? You win a ring, you trade away assets, you got rid of pieces for the ring, and hey, you cannot hate on somebody for doing that. They obviously won a championship. It can never be deemed as a failure. But the ramifications of what has happened is now that you basically have to lie in the bed that you made with LeBron James for the Lakers. Because you gave up so many of your draft picks before. There's no way that you're going to be tanking now or like getting rid of LeBron James now, because if you do, those draft picks are not going to you. They're going to the other teams. And so I think there's a reason why there was some hesitancy from them to trade away that pick that would have let them get Kyrie Irving. And I think that's kind of the issue. I think the price is right, but I'm not sure if the Lakers are the team that necessarily has to pay that price. Because I think, in my opinion, they basically shot themselves in the foot, like you said. They spent way too much on other assets on the team that are not going to be paying off very well. You got Russell Westbrook, all this other stuff. And the thing with LeBron James is that even though he is worth the money, the last year where he had to kind of do it on his own clearly shows that he does need help. You know, there's a reason why when they won the championship, Anthony Davis was the best player on that team. I know LeBron James was a really good player on that team, but Anthony Davis was in another stratosphere that year. And that was the time where I was like, dang, you know, Anthony Davis, if he can stay healthy, he could have been on the Giannis projection. Maybe not as physical or like demanding or like powerful down below, you know, going to the basket and finishing over people. But you could clearly see that he was the best player. And again, I know that this is off topic from The Price is Right, but for LeBron James, in order for him to kind of be worth the price of admission or worth the price that you're paying for him, he needs to go to a team where they're contending. And I just don't think the Lakers at this current point with the roster that they have currently is going to be contending for a championship. I think they'll be contending for a playoff spot if the guys can stay healthy. Even with Westbrook's style of play, they can still be competitive. I'm just worried about the fact that the Lakers, or maybe I'm not worried because, you know, I don't really care about the Lakers that much, right? But it as a franchise person that would love the Lakers, I think that this is a situation where now you just have to basically deal with the fact that you're going to keep LeBron James. You're going to suck for a couple of years down the line, but you're going to get that scoring record, LeBron James. See, like the thing for the Lakers is they have to pay him, because if you don't want that scoring title of the passing of the torch from Kareem to LeBron James be like Laker to Cavalier. If you're the Lakers, you want the Laker passing the torch from Laker to Laker. And I could clearly see, you know, Kareem coming to the building that day, LeBron James beating him finally in the points category, and then all of a sudden there's a great moment, and you're going to make a lot of money from that moment. And I don't want to be cynical about it, but I think they are going to make a lot of money from that story and from that situation. I think they're probably going to wear some special jerseys. They obviously can sell shoes and other things like that. I mean, there's a lot of different revenues that you can go down to make that money. But I don't know, Pete. I think that, like, as much as LeBron James is worth that money, I think the Lakers have to think about their future as well. And do they think that if he is worth the money, do you keep him or do you let him go? And for what I would say, for the better of the franchise, you let him go and let him be on another team, maybe the Cavaliers, like we talked about in the past, and kind of let him finish out his career there. But for the Lakers, I know that they don't really care about their franchise for the future; they care about the now. And so I could clearly see them just keeping LeBron James, maybe keeping Westbrook even, because I think it's going to be hard to get rid of that contract, and then just calling it a day. Calling it a day, let him beat Kareem's record, and then have Bronny play on the team with him 1 year, and then he's gone. And I think that's kind of the situation that I'm going to see from the LA Lakers.
Yeah, at that point, Bernie, I would say, why would you pay him? If you can't get rid of Westbrook, if you can't do anything to make any moves for this roster, why would you pay him? Like, why? I get the idea of just like he's LeBron, and I know I'm kind of contradicting what I just said in terms of whatever he wants, but I don't think he would sign that contract, because this is the dilemma with this situation with Bron and the Lakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you think LeBron is worth as a fan, whatever you think of him as a person, whatever it is, he has unlimited leverage. He has maybe put him and Tom Brady are like the two highest leverage sports athletes ever to play sports, right? And a lot of it has to do with the changing landscape of sports and like player empowerment and all that kind of stuff that everybody talks about all the time. But beyond even that, just the business side of things.
Mm-hmm.
LeBron at this point in his life, in his career, whatever he decides to do, the money of his NBA contract is maybe the most secondary thing of any player in the league, right?
Yeah.
He just doesn't, it's not all about the money on the contract to LeBron, because he has unlimited revenue resources everywhere else in his life,
Yeah.
So it really goes beyond the money for the Lakers in terms of, or for him, I would say. And then you have to question for the Lakers, like, really, should they pay him 50 if they can't do anything? Should they pay him 50 million a year? Because we just said it. We both said it, and people use it as a huge detractor for LeBron, right? In terms of, can he carry you away like he used to, right? And who do you need to put around him in order to make it far? And people use that as like he needs all these high quality players to make it far. But name me one player in the league not named him from 2013 who do that. Is did, right? The league is just better in general.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of one of those things.
Like, you don't think like a few steps better? No, you go for it. I'm sorry, I probably cut out.
No. Yeah, I think you did cut out, and God dang it, this internet cheese. But I think, like you said, I mean, it's kind of one of those things, though. Like when you talk about Tim Duncan and all those guys, like, he's just a guy that you want on the roster. He's a guy that clearly can still provide value, even if he's not the top guy. Like, he can clearly be a guy that, again, is going to score, his 27, 7, and 7, even at the age of 37 years old. He's still going to get that stat line no matter what timeline he's on. And he's got about, till he's like 41, 42. And even that might be pushing it, in my opinion. He probably gets to 40, I think, and plays. But yeah, I mean, it's just hard to imagine LeBron James at this point of his career being the carrier of an organization when it really should be the young guys. I mean, that's the reason why you sign a Westbrook, you sign an Anthony Davis, you sign those guys, because those guys are younger. They can take those bumps a little bit more than LeBron James, even though LeBron James can still take them. But you limit the amount of bumps he takes so you can have that all for the playoffs, and then you win a championship because the younger guys are the ones that take the bumps. And for me, it's frustrating to see that at this point that LeBron James is being held to the standard that, he has to be able to carry the team at the age of 37 years old by Twitter trolls and Mickey Mouse comments and Skip Bayless and all these other clowns that are on Twitter. Uh, that the standard is just unreasonable. Like even Michael Jordan at his age, when he played for the Wizards, couldn't even carry them to the playoffs. So you can't be telling me that LeBron James should be carrying any team at the age of 37 at this point. Again, he's still a great player. He's still going to do 27-7, but that 27-7 is not going to be able to carry a roster that we looked at past tense with guys. When you have Anthony Davis and Westbrook out, you have to carry Malik Monk, Carmelo Anthony, who's also another aging veteran, Wayne Ellington, all these other, old guys. He's not going to be able to do that anymore. And I think that it's unreasonable to say that an NBA player of his caliber or an NBA player, at his age should be carrying anything at this point. Let him be the number 2, let him be the number 3, and let him kind of be the accessory piece to your star guys. I mean, that's the reason why you bring in Anthony Davis. But those guys have clearly shown time and time again that they are not ready to be the guys. And it's frustrating as someone who appreciates LeBron James's game go to a team where they don't really appreciate him as a player. And again, Laker fans are the most unreasonable fans that you could ever deal with, Pete. I'm sure that you've dealt with some in your life. And it's a frustrating conversation to have with them sometimes.
In a close group.
So, I don't know. I probably talked way too much on that,
I mean,
it's frustrating.
The last thing I'll say, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Last thing I'll say, as far as the standard, as far as his age, as far as carrying anything is concerned, people have an outdated version of what carrying a team is in the NBA. They really do. We've even seen it even just in the stream, talking about Jokic, right? He is the closest player right now, and not in any way his play style, how any of that. That's not what I mean. He is the closest thing in NBA right now to like LeBron in 2005, 2006, when he was taking those Cavs teams to the Eastern Conference Finals and they were terrible, right? Maybe that was more like 2008. But the difference is the league is so much better now that it's impossible to go that far if you just have one good guy, one great guy. It's impossible to go that far. All you have to do is look back, and this one goes out to all you Warriors fans, all you Steph Curry lovers, right? Steph Curry is one of the best players of all time. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just trying to make sure people keep the same standard and energy for all players in the league. You cannot rate people according to how much you like them personally or not, right? Go back, not last season, the season before for the Warriors, right? Lots of injuries, an older team, maybe not the best constructed roster, but they also had a lot of young guys who just weren't ready, right? What did they do? They got knocked out in the play-in game by the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah.
As great as Steph Curry is, younger point in his career could not carry that team anywhere near the Western Conference Finals or the Finals. He couldn't do it because that is not the league that we are in anymore. One dude is not enough for any team, no matter of age, no matter how good they've been in the past. It doesn't matter. The league is so deep. There's a reason that there's expansion teams being talked about every other week nowadays. It's because there's so many good players in the league. So holding LeBron to the standard of, hey, you used to go to the finals every year. You went to the finals 8 years in a row. Why aren't you doing that now? You must be worse than you were. It's just not true, man. It's just not true. Yeah. I challenge you to go find a player who does more on the court than LeBron James, other than maybe Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, Luka. Like those might be the 4 guys who do more night in, night out than LeBron does. They really might be the only guys. Yeah. And that is not just me being a biased stan of LeBron. It's just true. It's just true.
Exactly. And then Sean, I'll read your comment, and then we'll get out of here. You said they still almost lost the Grizzlies this year too, and I think he's talking about the Warriors.
I mean, it's true. It's true. But people will say that now, every time you look, Steph Curry climbs up the all-time ranking list, and I would say rightfully so. He still does not get like LeBron, and this has been true his whole career. He has been held to a different standard than every player in NBA history. He truly has, and he still is now.
Yeah. So again, let us know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of all this stuff? And again, guys, we do appreciate you joining us here on The Charge, giving the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Again, there's a lot of things to talk about with these contract extensions. The Price is Right. Again, this is another segment that we're going to do here on the charge regularly. Maybe as we continue to look at players that are up for eligibility, as players continue to improve themselves each and every year, we're going to look at, is the price right for the contract extension that they want for the next prior year? And we're probably going to talk a little bit about the Golden State Warriors in the future, about their team, and do they bring back guys? What's the whole situation there? But nevertheless, like I said, my name is Bernie. Thank you once again for joining us here on The Charge, bringing you, like I said, the NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. Hope you guys did enjoy today's episode. Again, Price is Right. We talked a lot about different players, talked about Brunson, talked about James, talked about the Golden State Warriors. And before we get out of here, Pete, do you have one last thing to say before we sign out?
Just stay tuned, guys. We got a lot of stuff cooking right now. We've got a lot of ideas we're working with. We're going to introduce a new series hopefully soon. But yeah, we appreciate everybody. Again, like and subscribe, but just keep your eyes and ears peeled for some new stuff coming from us.
Yeah, exactly. We're definitely looking to grow the channel in many different ways and many different avenues and revenues. Because again, we appreciate you guys, and we're still working on what we can do to kind of give back to you guys. And so we're still working on that. We're doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And so I just want to keep you guys updated with that, to let you know that this is not just going to be the same old stuff time and time again. We're going to add some different things, new series, new videos, different ideas, different things. So it's not just strictly me and the camera, or even Pete when he gets his camera. Like, it's not going to be us and a camera all the time looking at you guys. As much as this is fun, I'm sure you guys also want something new as well from basketball content wise. But nevertheless, enough for me shilling for my own channel. Thank you once again for joining us here on The Charge. Like I said, bringing the latest NBA news and rumors and also basketball opinions. But remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button if you're new to the channel. Anyway, guys, we'll catch you on the next episode.